I always thought I was the kind of guy who could trust his wife. Her name was Sarah, and we'd been together for almost 7 years. Sure, she had her quirks, but every marriage does, right? Or at least, that's what I told myself. The truth, though, was that I was always a little suspicious of Sarah's behavior. It wasn't anything concrete at first, just odd little things. Late nights at work, the sudden need for me time, her unwillingness to talk about her day. She'd shrug off my questions, always with that sweet smile, that fake warmth that I used to fall for. I wasn't the paranoid type, not really. But it gnawed at me. Something felt off. And then, one night, everything changed. It started like any other evening. I got home from my job, a little late, but nothing out of the ordinary. I expected to walk into the house and see Sarah there, maybe doing some laundry or watching TV. Instead, I came in and found the house eerily quiet. A bit too quiet. I called out for her, but no answer. I walked into our bedroom, and that's when I saw him. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. There, on the bed, was a man. Not just any man, though. He was naked, tangled up in our sheets, looking like he had just climbed out of the sheets himself. And then there was Sarah. She wasn't much better, lying there beside him, looking guilty, but also smug, like she didn't care who saw. The moment we locked eyes, her face turned from shock to defensiveness. The liar's mask came on quick, like a reflex. "James." She started, her voice a soft, fake whisper. "It's not what you think." I barely heard her, my pulse pounding in my ears. I wasn't sure what to do. I wasn't sure if I should scream, or just walk out. I didn't do either, though. My legs moved before my mind caught up, and I found myself walking toward the bed. The guy, who was, at this point, scrambling to get dressed, looked like he was about to say something. But I wasn't in the mood to hear explanations. I didn't need any more lies. I hit him. Hard. Right across the face. He collapsed on the floor, dazed and gasping for air. I didn't care. It wasn't enough. The anger and betrayal flooded me so fast, I wasn't even sure if I could think straight. Sarah just sat there, staring at me. There was no remorse, no apology, nothing that would resemble a person who cared. It was like she wasn't even fazed. "You can't hit him," she screeched, finally finding her voice. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I turned to her then, my chest tight with a rage that didn't know where to go. I had to do something. I had to confront her, get the truth. Because this wasn't just a mistake, wasn't just a one-time slip-up. This was cold, calculated. It had been happening for a while, I was sure of it now. I turned to face the guy, still trying to scramble back into his clothes. "You," I said, voice trembling with both fury and control. "You're lucky I don't just kill you right now." The man's face went pale, his eyes wide with panic. "I didn't mean. I swear, it wasn't. I didn't care." His excuses were nothing. No words would fix what had already been broken. But Sarah had the nerve to act like I was the one in the wrong. She opened her mouth to say something else, to defend herself, but I wasn't interested in her words anymore. With a motion so quick it surprised even me, I grabbed the guy by his collar, yanking him up to his feet. His face went slack with fear. I was done pretending. Done with her. Done with all the lies. "You," I repeated, voice low and menacing, "are going to tell me everything. And you better make it count, because I'm done with this game." Sarah looked between me and the guy, her smug expression slowly melting into something else. Something close to fear. She tried to speak, but I silenced her with a sharp gesture. I had no patience left for her lies. I grabbed the syringe I'd hidden in my pocket, the one I'd brought for this very moment. I wasn't thinking clearly, but I didn't care. I needed answers, and I needed them now. Listen, pal, I said, shoving the needle into his arm. I'm going to inject you with a powerful poison, and you'll have exactly 30 minutes to tell me everything. Then, maybe, just maybe, I'll give you the antidote. I watched as his eyes went wide with terror. Sarah's face drained of color, but she didn't say a word. She couldn't. This was all her fault. As I turned on the camera I'd set up in the corner earlier, I felt a sick sense of satisfaction. It was time for the truth to come out. Every last detail. The world would finally see who she truly was. The room was thick with tension. The man, he had stopped trying to speak, his face a mask of terror now, was slumped against the wall, eyes darting around, clearly calculating how to beg for mercy. But I wasn't interested in mercy. I didn't need his pleading. I needed to hear every word of the truth, no matter how ugly or painful. I turned my gaze to Sarah. Her eyes had shifted from defiance to something resembling fear. She knew I wasn't playing around. I wasn't asking questions anymore. This was war. And I was going to win. I began, my voice low but forceful. You've been lying to me for how long? How many times did you slip into this bastard's arms? How many lies did you tell me to cover this up? She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I could see her trying to come up with something, anything, to make the situation look like my fault. She wasn't going to get away with it. Not now. You always think you can get away with everything, don't you, Sarah? I continued, turning to her now. The late nights, the business trips, the nights you needed space. All of it was just a cover-up, wasn't it? For this. I gestured to the guy, who was now shivering on the floor. She stood there, her face twisted in disbelief. James, you have to understand, it's not what it looks like. I love you. I always have, she stammered, as if trying to reach for something, anything, inside her to make her seem like she still had a shred of dignity. But there was nothing left. The woman I had married, the woman I thought I knew, was gone. And in her place stood a liar, an opportunist, someone who could look at me, the man who had stood by her for years, and lie to my face without flinching. I shook my head in disgust. You don't get it, do you? The love you claim to have for me, it's a joke. You don't love me. If you did, you wouldn't be in bed with him. You wouldn't have kept all of this a secret. You wouldn't have torn apart everything we built together just because it felt good for a second. The man on the floor, his body racked with fear, tried again to speak. Please. I didn't know she was married. She told me you two were separated. She said she was going through a divorce. Please. I didn't let him finish. His words were like knives in my chest, but I wasn't going to show weakness. I had to stay in control. Shut up, I barked at him, moving closer to where he knelt, his hands trembling in his lap. You think I'm going to pity you? You think I care that you were lied to? You knew what you were doing. And don't you dare try to act innocent now. I turned back to Sarah, who was visibly crumbling. The mask of the perfect wife, the loving woman who had played her part for so long, was slipping fast. Tell me, I demanded. How long have you been seeing him? How many times? Her lips trembled. She didn't want to answer. But I could see in her eyes the same hesitation that all cheaters have when they're caught, guilt, sure, but more than that, fear. Fear of the consequences. Fear of facing the reality of what she had done. Don't make me do this, I warned her. Tell me, and I'll let you walk out of here with some dignity. Don't, and I'll expose you for everything you really are. She swallowed hard, but the words that came out were not the ones I was expecting. It's been 6 months, she whispered, her voice barely audible. 6 months, James. It just happened. It was just supposed to be. I don't know. Fun. But it turned into something else. I don't want a divorce, James. I don't want this to end. I felt a chill creep down my spine as the words sank in. 6 months. Half a year. And all this time, I had no idea. No idea that the woman I trusted had been betraying me behind my back. She wasn't even sorry. She wasn't even ashamed. You didn't want it to end? I repeated, my voice growing more venomous. Well, guess what, Sarah? It just did. I took a step back, my mind racing. I had so many thoughts, so many emotions crashing through me, anger, disbelief, pain. But through it all, I was in control. I had the power now. Let me tell you something, I said, my voice cold and steady. You may have thought you could juggle me and him like it was some kind of game. But I'm not a fool. And you're not the person I thought you were. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't care. There were no more tears left for me. I was done being the emotional fool. This wasn't some TV drama where people made up and lived happily ever after. No, this was real life, and I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed. The guy on the floor was still squirming, obviously terrified. But I wasn't done with him either. I needed to know how deep this went. I needed answers, and I would get them one way or another. You better start talking, I said, my voice deadly calm. Everything. I want details. You'll tell me how long this affair's been going on. And you'll tell me what she's been telling you. Every little lie she's fed you. The guy nodded frantically, his eyes wide with terror. Okay, he stammered. She told me she was going through a separation, that you didn't care about her anymore. She said that you were abusive, that you treated her badly, that she didn't feel loved. And she wanted out, but she didn't want to hurt you. So, she started seeing me to get the affection she needed. His words stung, but I had heard enough. I knew they were just excuses, just more lies she'd wrapped herself in to justify what she was doing. Sarah's head dropped, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. But I wasn't about to show her mercy. No, not after everything. Not after all the lies. Is that really how you saw it, Sarah? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Or is it just how you wanted it to be? Sarah didn't answer immediately. She just sat there, frozen, her face pale, her eyes clouded with confusion, guilt, and something else, something darker, more dangerous. Maybe she was still trying to rationalize what she had done. Maybe she was waiting for me to soften, for some shred of pity to creep in. But I wasn't the same person who walked into this room earlier today. The man who trusted her, the man who loved her, he was gone, replaced by someone who had been pushed to the brink by lies, by deceit, and by a betrayal so deep it felt like a knife wound. You can keep crying, I said coldly, but it doesn't change anything. You've already made your choice, Sarah. You've already made your bed. Her eyes shot up at me, defiance flashing through her tears. James, please listen to me. It wasn't like that. I was trying to make things work, I swear. I raised a hand to silence her. I didn't need her excuses. There was no fixing this. Not anymore. The guy, still kneeling on the floor, was shaking uncontrollably. He kept looking at Sarah, then at me, trying to make sense of what was going on, probably wishing he was anywhere else. But I wasn't done with him either. You think you can just waltz in here and take what's mine? I said, turning toward him with cold fury in my eyes. You think you can just steal my wife and pretend like I won't care? Like I won't notice? His face paled further, and he shook his head quickly, hands still bound. I didn't know, man. I didn't know you were married to her. She told me things were over. That you guys were separated. I couldn't stop the angry laugh that escaped me. You believe her? You seriously believe her? You think she was going to leave me for you? She was lying to both of us the whole time. I stepped closer to him, pressing him harder into the corner. Tell me, what else did she tell you? Was I really the bad guy in all this? Was I the one who pushed her into your arms? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like she's the one who's been playing us both for fools. The guy stammered, but his fear was becoming palpable. No. No, I didn't mean it like that. She said you didn't love her anymore, that you didn't touch her, that you were distant, cold. I didn't let him finish. What the hell do you know about my relationship? You think you know what's going on behind closed doors? You have no idea how much I gave to that woman. And now, look at her. Look at what she's turned into. I turned back to Sarah, who was no longer crying. Her face was blank, like she was trying to convince herself she was still in control. I had to admire her nerve, even if it was a desperate, final attempt to salvage her pride. You've ruined everything, I said to her, my voice colder than ice. You've destroyed the one thing that was real to me. And for what? For what, Sarah? Some cheap thrill? Her eyes darted away, and for a brief second, I saw a flicker of shame. But then, in true Sarah fashion, she hardened. She wasn't going to let me win. You never understood, she spat, her voice sharp. You never understood me. You never tried. It was always about you, James. You think I don't know? You think I didn't see it? How you got so consumed with your career, with your own life, that you forgot about me? About us? I blinked, momentarily stunned by her words. But only for a second. She was deflecting, blaming me, trying to twist the narrative to make herself the victim. It was pathetic. It was all just a final, desperate grasp for control. No, I said, shaking my head slowly. No, Sarah. This isn't about me. This is about you. This is about your choices, your lies. You couldn't keep your legs closed, and now you're trying to blame me? I never did anything to you except love you. But you? You betrayed me. You destroyed everything. I walked toward her, my steps measured, deliberate. The room felt small now, too small for the emotions swirling inside of me. Anger, betrayal, sadness, all competing for dominance. But I knew one thing for certain now, I wasn't going to let her walk away from this unscathed. She didn't deserve that. You're going to answer my questions, Sarah. You're going to tell me everything. I deserve that much, don't you think? My voice was low, but it held a finality that made her flinch. She looked at me, her expression faltering for a moment, and then she gave a little nod, as if finally realizing that there was no getting out of this. She was trapped. And that, I think, was the hardest thing for her to accept. I moved to the table where I had set up the camera. My hand hovered over the button for a moment, and then I pressed it. The red light flickered on, and I could see Sarah's face twist into a mask of resignation. Everything. Now, I said. She swallowed hard, the words coming out in a reluctant stream. I started seeing him because I didn't feel like you wanted me anymore. You were always so focused on your job. You stopped paying attention to me, to what I needed. And I didn't know how to deal with it. I felt ignored. Lonely. I almost laughed, but it wasn't funny. No, it wasn't funny at all. Is that your excuse? I asked bitterly. You were lonely. So, instead of talking to me, instead of trying to fix things, you cheated? You lied? You thought that was the way to handle it? She bit her lip, the shame returning to her eyes. I didn't think it would turn into this. I didn't think it would go this far. I thought maybe I could find something, someone, who made me feel important again. Someone who made me feel wanted. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks, and for a moment, I couldn't speak. I could feel the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me, suffocating me. You wanted someone who made you feel wanted, I repeated, the bitterness in my voice cutting through the silence. Well, you found him. But you lost me in the process. And there's no coming back from that. I turned to the man, who was still watching us in terror, waiting for his next move. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with him yet, whether he would walk out of here alive or not. But one thing was for sure, Sarah had already made her decision. And I would make mine soon enough. The room was thick with the weight of all the words left unsaid. My chest tightened as I stood there, staring at Sarah. Her eyes were wide, her face flushed from the emotional storm we just unleashed. For a moment, I considered what she'd said, her reasons for betraying me, her hollow excuses about loneliness and neglect. But that didn't matter anymore. The past few hours had shown me a side of her I didn't know existed. A side I couldn't unsee. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even ashamed anymore. She was just angry that she'd been caught. Do you realize what you've done? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Do you realize that everything we had is gone now? I can't look at you the same way. I can't trust you anymore. Sarah stood up, her face softening for a second, her hand reaching out as if to touch me, to comfort me. But I stepped back, instinctively recoiling from the touch I once craved. The touch that now felt like poison. You don't understand, James, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I didn't want to hurt you. I just wanted to feel alive again. I couldn't believe my ears. Alive again? As if our life together had been some sort of prison. As if everything we built was worthless to her. You wanted to feel alive? I scoffed, pacing around the room. You wanted to feel alive, so you destroyed everything we had? Do you even understand how that sounds? Her face twisted, and for the first time since all this began, I saw real anger in her eyes. Don't act like you're the saint here, James. You never paid attention to me. You never cared. You were always too busy with your stupid job. You were never there for me when I needed you. I could feel my blood boiling, but I had to stay calm. I had to think clearly. If I lost control now, I'd be no better than her. But it was hard, so hard not to snap, not to scream, not to make her feel the full weight of her betrayal. You're right, I said, each word coming out slowly, deliberately. I wasn't perfect. Maybe I should have been there more, paid attention more. But that doesn't give you the right to do this. To destroy everything we built. You chose to go behind my back. You chose to hurt me. She opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. No. Enough. We're done. This marriage is over. For a moment, there was silence. The kind of silence that hangs heavy in the air, suffocating everything around it. Sarah stood there, frozen, her face unreadable. But I could see the fear in her eyes. Fear that the man she thought she could control, the man she thought would always forgive her, was finally done. You're really going to do this? She asked, her voice low, almost pleading. You're really just going to throw it all away like this? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My actions spoke louder than any words I could say. Turning away from her, I focused on the man who had been sitting there quietly, his body trembling with fear. I had almost forgotten about him. He was still a part of this mess, still an unwelcome guest in the wreckage of my life. But now, I needed to deal with him. I turned the syringe in my hand, watching the way the needle caught the light. You're next, I said, my voice calm, eerily so. You've got 10 minutes. I want the truth. Everything. He gulped, his eyes wide with terror. The guy had no idea what kind of storm he was standing in. I could see the regret in his face, but it wasn't enough. He was still a piece of this puzzle, and I needed answers. "What's her game, man?" I asked, my voice like ice. "What did she tell you? What else did she promise you? How deep does this go?" The guy looked like he was about to break down. His hands were still tied, but I could see his body shaking. She told me that you were a disappointment, that you didn't give her what she needed. That she'd been trying to get your attention for years, but it didn't work. She said she was looking for someone who could make her feel wanted, needed, someone who didn't just see her as the wife but as a woman. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. They weren't a revelation, but they stung nonetheless. I had known something was wrong, but hearing it from him, made it all too real. Sarah had been playing me for a fool, and I had been too blind to see it. I turned to her, fury building again. "You're telling me that this was about attention? That this was about your needs not being met? Are you really that shallow, Sarah? Is that what this was all about? A couple of compliments, some affection from him, and suddenly I don't matter?" Her lips parted as if to defend herself, but she couldn't form the words. She couldn't lie her way out of this anymore. I glanced back at the guy. "What else? Don't hold back. I want to know everything." His voice was shaky, but he couldn't hold it in any longer. "She told me, she said she was planning on leaving you. That she didn't want to be with someone who didn't care about her. She said it was only a matter of time before you'd be out of the picture." My blood ran cold. I felt like I had been sucker punched. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't a simple fling. Sarah had been plotting. She had been planning her exit long before I even had a clue. Planning her exit? I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. "You're telling me she was already thinking about leaving me? While we were still married? While she was still playing the part of the loving wife?" He nodded, unable to stop the words from spilling out. "Yeah, she said she didn't care about you anymore. She was just waiting for the right moment." A wave of nausea hit me, but I forced it down. I wasn't going to let her see me break. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction. This was the moment of clarity I needed. I finally saw everything for what it was, a lie, a game, a slow burn of betrayal. "You know what, Sarah?" I said, turning to face her for the last time. "You can have him. You can have whatever it is you wanted from this. Because I'm done. You've made your choice, and I'm making mine. There's no coming back from this. We're over." She didn't speak again. She didn't fight back. She just stood there, the reality settling in like a heavy weight, and I knew, without a doubt, that I was never going to see her the same way again. I could feel the weight of the silence thickening around us, suffocating me, suffocating her. Sarah's face was a mix of anger and resignation now, and I could see her trying to gather the fragments of her pride, though it was too late for that. She'd already torn everything apart. There was nothing left to salvage. I turned back to the man who had been part of this twisted little drama. He still sat on the floor, bound and trembling, his eyes darting between Sarah and me, as if trying to figure out which of us was more dangerous. But right now, he was just an afterthought. I didn't need his apologies, his regrets. All I needed was the final piece of the puzzle, and once I had it, he would cease to be anything but a footnote in the mess Sarah had created. I walked over to him, each step deliberate, each movement purposeful. His breath hitched as I got closer, but I wasn't looking for fear from him anymore. I wasn't interested in breaking him physically, no, I wanted to break him mentally. I wanted him to understand what he'd done, what his involvement had cost me. "You really thought she'd leave me for you, huh?" I asked, the bitterness in my voice curling like smoke. "You think you're special? That you're the one who could fix her? Newsflash, she doesn't care about you. She never did. The man shifted uncomfortably, his eyes wide and pleading. I didn't mean to cause all this, man. I didn't know what I was getting into. She told me you were cold and distant and that she needed more. I just didn't want to be another guy she was using. His voice cracked, but it didn't matter. I couldn't feel sorry for him. I couldn't feel sorry for either of them. The moment he stepped into my life, he became an accessory to the betrayal. No amount of regret would change that. You're right about one thing, I said, kneeling down to his level, my face inches from his. You didn't know what you were getting into. But now you do. And you'll leave here knowing exactly what you've cost me. I stood up and turned away from him, not because I felt pity, but because the real issue still lay in front of me. Sarah. She was still standing there, arms folded, staring at me with a look I couldn't quite read. She was no longer the woman I married. No, she was something else entirely. Something darker. A version of her that had been hiding beneath the surface, waiting to emerge. You think you've won? I asked her, the words slipping out with a dry laugh. You think you've outsmarted me, outmaneuvered me? What's left now, huh? What do you want from me now? More apologies? More excuses? Her lips parted, but she couldn't answer. She couldn't give me anything anymore. I had taken it all away. The power she once held over me, the control she thought she had, it was all gone. And in its place? Nothing. I turned back to the man, the regret still etched on his face, though now it was more like a faint aftertaste. He had no idea what had just happened in this room, what kind of emotional warfare he had walked into. Get out, I said to him, my voice ice cold. Get up. Leave. You've already done enough damage. I'm done with you. He didn't hesitate. He scrambled to his feet, muttering apologies, but I didn't care. They meant nothing. He was just a casualty, another piece of debris floating in the wake of Sarah's destruction. As soon as the door slammed behind him, I turned back to Sarah, my eyes hard, my chest tight. I could see it in her eyes, the way she was processing everything, trying to make sense of the chaos she had caused. She was still trying to rationalize it, to make it all somehow my fault. I didn't want this to happen, James, she said softly, her voice quivering. I didn't want it to go this far. I swear. I shook my head, the anger building again, but this time, it was quieter, more controlled. It's too late for that, Sarah. You don't get to pull the "I didn't want it to happen" card. You made your choices. You knew exactly what you were doing every step of the way. And now you're going to live with the consequences. Her eyes welled up with tears, but I didn't want to see them. I didn't want to hear her apologies anymore. She had hurt me in a way I couldn't explain, and no amount of crying was going to fix that. She had chosen this path, and now she had to walk it alone. You're not the woman I married anymore, I said, my voice breaking with the finality of it all. You've become someone I don't even recognize. And I don't want to know her. I'm done. Sarah looked at me as if she were hoping I would change my mind, but I had already made it. I had already made the decision. The only thing left now was for her to accept it. I don't know what to say, she whispered, the defeat in her voice clear now. I don't know how to fix this. Fix it? I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. You can't fix this, Sarah. It's broken. It's beyond repair. She fell silent, her shoulders slumping. She no longer seemed like the woman I had once cherished. She looked small, insignificant even. And in that moment, I realized just how far gone we were. There was no coming back from this. The marriage was over. I reached for my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart, my hand steady despite the turmoil swirling inside me. I need a lawyer, I said when the other end picked up. I need to start the divorce proceedings. The words tasted like ash in my mouth, but they were necessary. The decision had been made. There was no going back. And as much as it hurt, as much as it stung, I knew deep down that it was the right choice. I was done living in a lie. I was done pretending. It was time to move on. When I hung up the phone, I turned to Sarah one last time. She was still standing there, waiting, but I couldn't bring myself to feel anything for her anymore. The person I once loved was gone. And in her place was a stranger. "I'm done," I said, my voice quieter now. "You need to leave. We're finished here." She didn't argue. She didn't fight me. She just nodded, tears streaming down her face as she turned to walk out the door. And as she left, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. It was over. The door clicked shut behind Sarah with a quiet finality that echoed in the pit of my stomach. The sound was a cruel reminder of everything that had just happened, the destruction of a life I thought was mine, the end of a chapter one never thought would close. The silence that followed was suffocating. The apartment, which had once felt like a home, now seemed foreign and hollow, a place filled with echoes of the past. I stood there for a moment, just breathing. My chest felt tight, as if the weight of everything was still sitting on top of me, refusing to let me go. My mind was running a mile a minute, processing everything that had just unfolded, trying to make sense of it, trying to understand how my life had spiraled so far out of control in such a short time. But nothing made sense. The more I thought about it, the more the pieces just didn't fit. Sarah had always been a part of my world, my confidant, the woman I thought I would grow old with. And yet, here I was, alone, standing in the ruins of our life together. It felt like an out-of-body experience, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart. I glanced over at the clock, noticing that it was late in the evening, the sky outside already dark. I hadn't eaten all day. Hell, I hadn't even thought about eating. Everything had been so consumed by the confrontation, the revelations, the rage, that nothing else had mattered. But now, with the chaos gone, all I could think about was the emptiness left behind. The silence. The void. I walked over to the kitchen, my movements slow, almost mechanical, as if my body was going through the motions without my mind really being there. I opened the fridge, took out a bottle of water, and drank it slowly, feeling the cool liquid slide down my throat. But it didn't help. It didn't clear the fog in my head or ease the tightness in my chest. The truth was, I was tired. I was so damn tired. Tired of trying to make sense of Sarah's lies. Tired of being the fool, the man who couldn't see what was right in front of him. I had invested so much into our marriage, so much into the idea of a future together, that now, in the aftermath, I felt hollow. Like I'd given everything I had, and it hadn't been enough. But the anger, oh, the anger was still there. It simmered beneath the surface, threatening to boil over. The kind of anger that's raw, primal, and all-consuming. I had been betrayed. My trust had been shattered. My heart had been torn apart. And I couldn't just turn that off. I walked to the living room, pacing back and forth, my thoughts racing. Every time I thought I had a handle on it, every time I thought I could let go, my mind would drag me back into the wreckage. What had she said? That she was looking for someone who could make her feel alive. What did that even mean? Was I that much of a failure in her eyes? Was everything I did, everything we built, nothing but a waste of time? I stopped pacing and looked around the room. The pictures on the walls, the books on the shelf, the little things that had once made this place our home, now they just felt like reminders of a lie. Everything I had believed in, everything I thought I knew, was now in question. Was our life together just a carefully constructed illusion? A story we both told ourselves to avoid facing the truth? My phone buzzed on the coffee table, interrupting my thoughts. I glanced at the screen, expecting another call from a family member or maybe a friend who had heard about what happened. But it wasn't a call. It was a text from Sarah. "Please, James. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I'm sorry. Can we talk?" I felt my blood boil. The audacity. The sheer nerve to reach out to me after everything. After I had just kicked her out of my life, after I had witnessed her destroy everything we had, she still thought she could manipulate me into taking her back. She still thought she could weave some new version of the truth and get away with it. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly at the message. She was the same woman, the same manipulative person, the one who had used guilt, excuses, and lies to get whatever she wanted. It didn't matter how many times she apologized or begged. It was too late. I typed a quick reply, my fingers moving with purpose as I forced myself to sound calm. "It's over, Sarah. There's nothing left to say." I hit send, then stared at the screen for a moment. There was a small part of me that wanted to throw my phone across the room, to smash it against the wall and feel the satisfaction of destroying something else. But I didn't. I didn't need to. I didn't need her, and I didn't need any part of that past anymore. The phone buzzed again. I expected another text, another plea for forgiveness. But instead, it was a message from my lawyer. "Got your message. We'll begin the paperwork for the divorce tomorrow. Let me know if you need anything else." I stared at the screen, feeling a sense of cold finality wash over me. The paperwork was already in motion. This was happening. There was no turning back. No more talking, no more second chances. This was the moment where everything changed. The weight of it all hit me at once. I wasn't just losing my wife, I was losing the version of myself that had been tied to her. The man who had believed in their marriage, in their future together. That man was gone. And in his place, I had to find a new version of myself. One who didn't need her, who wasn't consumed by the past, who could look forward and rebuild. I dropped the phone on the couch and sank into the armchair, my head in my hands. The tears didn't come. But the anger did. It surged back like a wave, crashing through every part of me. I had been played, betrayed, manipulated. I had been a fool. But I wasn't going to be a fool anymore. No, this wasn't the end. This was the beginning. The beginning of something new. And whatever that future looked like, it was going to be mine, mine to shape, mine to control. Because I was done being someone else's pawn. Done letting someone else's lies define me. And with that thought, something clicked inside me. It wasn't about vengeance or revenge. It was about reclaiming my life. Reclaiming myself. Sarah's chapter in my life had ended. And now it was time for me to write my own story. The silence in the room was oppressive, but for the first time in days, it didn't suffocate me. I could breathe. I didn't need to explain myself to anyone. I didn't need to listen to more of Sarah's excuses, her empty promises. It felt liberating, almost euphoric, to know that I was finally free of her, free of the lie we had been living in. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the city. The lights were twinkling in the distance, each one a little beacon of something I had forgotten: hope. Life. Possibility. I could do whatever I wanted now. I wasn't shackled to someone who had used me for her own selfish desires. No more lies. No more deceit. I wasn't going to let this break me. It was easy to let anger consume you. It was easy to fall into the pit of bitterness, to wallow in regret and hatred. But I wasn't going to do that. I refused to let Sarah's actions dictate my happiness. She had taken so much from me, but she couldn't take my future. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Sarah. Her name on the screen didn't make me feel anything anymore. I had already made my decision. The message was almost laughable in its desperation. she still didn't get it. She still thought she could worm her way back into my life. Please, James. I know I messed up. I need you. Don't let this be the end of us. I stared at it for a long moment. I could feel the anger bubbling up again, but I forced myself to take a deep breath. She was still trying to manipulate me, still trying to guilt me into taking her back. But I was done. I wasn't the same man who had once believed in her lies. I wasn't going to let her control me anymore. I deleted the message without replying. And just like that, something shifted inside me. I wasn't a victim of her betrayal. I wasn't a pawn in her game. I was a man who had taken control of his life again, and I was going to make the most of it. I grabbed my keys, grabbed my coat, and walked out the door. The night air hit me like a shock to the system, and for a moment, I just stood there, letting the cool breeze wash over me. The weight in my chest felt lighter. My mind wasn't racing anymore. It was calm. Clear. I didn't know where I was going, and I didn't care. I just needed to get away from everything that reminded me of Sarah. The apartment, the furniture, the photographs of a life that was no longer mine, it all felt like a prison. I needed space to think, space to breathe, space to rebuild. I drove aimlessly through the streets, not sure what I was looking for but knowing I needed something different. The city was alive with noise, with people, with energy. It felt good to be out here, far away from the wreckage of my personal life. I drove for hours, letting the miles put distance between me and the pain. The further I went, the more I felt like myself again. Eventually, I ended up at a small bar on the outskirts of the city. It wasn't the kind of place I usually frequented, but it had the kind of anonymity I needed. I walked in, took a seat at the bar, and ordered a drink. The bartender didn't ask questions, and I didn't volunteer any answers. It was exactly what I needed, silence and solitude. As I sat there, I let my thoughts settle. The anger, the hurt, they were still there, lingering, but they didn't consume me anymore. It was like they were in the background, distant echoes of something that had once been central to my life. But now, they didn't matter. I could feel the pieces of myself coming back together. The man who had once been so sure of his marriage, of his life, he was gone. But the man I was becoming? Stronger. Wiser. Free. The night stretched on, and with each passing hour, I felt more in control. I was no longer defined by Sarah's actions. I wasn't going to let her define me. She had made her choices. She had chosen him over me. She had chosen lies and betrayal. But that didn't mean I had to live in her shadow. By the time I finished my drink, I was ready to go. I paid the bartender and left, stepping back into the night air. But this time, I didn't feel lost. I didn't feel broken. I felt like I was on the verge of something new. The future was wide open, and it was mine for the taking. I knew there would be hard days ahead. There would be moments of doubt, moments where I questioned myself, my decisions, the choices I made. But I also knew that I was no longer afraid of the unknown. I had been through hell, and I had come out on the other side stronger. The next chapter of my life was waiting for me, and I wasn't going to let anyone, especially Sarah, stop me from living it. The days that followed were filled with a strange mix of clarity and chaos. On one hand, I had never felt more certain of my decision to divorce Sarah. I knew it was the right choice. But on the other hand, there were moments where the emptiness crept in, and I questioned whether I was doing the right thing. The world felt different without her in it. The silence in our apartment, once a place of comfort, now felt like a gaping void. But with every passing day, I began to reclaim my space, my life, and my purpose. The pain didn't vanish overnight, but it became manageable. Each day, I moved closer to the version of myself that wasn't weighed down by betrayal, by lies, or by someone else's mistakes. I started spending time with friends I hadn't seen in years. I rediscovered passions I had forgotten about, things I used to love but had put aside for Sarah and our life together. I even signed up for a class in something I had always wanted to learn but never made time for. Slowly, I was rebuilding. Not just my life, but myself. And while I had no idea what the future held, I knew one thing for sure: I was never going to let myself be controlled again. I was going to live life on my own terms, and I was going to make sure that I never allowed another person to dictate my happiness. There was still a long road ahead, but now I was walking it with my head held high, no longer looking over my shoulder at the wreckage of the past. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope.